Okay, this is a continuation of 2.5, and like I said, 2.5 is really the longest section that we have because it covers a lot of material. Probably should be breaking into two sections, and that's kind of why I'm breaking it up into two videos. So for an example, if I'm trying to figure out this particular one, which would be 3x plus 2y is equal to 6. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to solve for y. Basically what I'm doing though is I'm isolating the y before I do anything else. Now for this particular one, I know that x is equal to 2, and these are way easier to solve when you only are left with one single variable, but it really doesn't matter. We just can kind of plug those numbers in anyway. So I'm going to plug in the 3 times 2, and all I'm doing is just substituting my x in for my 2 because I know what that is equal to. And I'm just going to continue on. 3 times 2 is 6. And the opposite of positive 6 is negative 6. Whatever I do on one side of the equation, I always do on the other side. That allows that to disappear. 6 minus 6 is going to give you a 0. And this is 2y is equal to 0. Now notice, we're trying to solve for y. If 2y is equal to 0, still divide both of these by 2. And remember, we've kind of covered this in a previous section, but you can have a 0 and divide that by a number, but you can't divide a number by 0, which is undefined. This one still works out to y is equal to 0 over 2. Any number divided into 0 is always going to give you 0. And of course, this is going to be your final answer. Now, if we work this one down any other way, we can just kind of substitute it in and say that 3 times 2 plus 2 times 0. We're just going to see if all of that is equal to 6. 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times 0 is 0, and 6 plus 0 is in fact 6. So we know that one worked out correctly. Now, if we move on to our next one, and sometimes we will use squares. So for an example, if I have x squared plus 2x, and all of that, let's say, is equal to, I don't know, let's say h. We'll use a different variable this time. So if I know that my x is equal to 4, and I'm trying to figure out what my y or what my h is equal to, so that's going to be my what I'm trying to solve for. Once again, I'm going to just input in my variables. This is going to be 4 squared plus 2 times x, which we know the x is 4, and all of that is going to be equal to h. So I've already got lettered on numbers on one side, got numbers on the other side, so all I have to basically do is finish working this out. Remember, 4 squared is the same thing as 4 times 4, and all of that time, or added that to 2 plus 4. 4 times 4 is 16, 2 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 16 is going to give you 24. So I know that that's going to be my final answer. Now, sometimes you can have different ones, and you can get fractions and different things like that. But let's say I had y minus 1, all of that divided by x, and all of that is equal to 3 over 2. All right. So this one's got a lot of different things going on, fractions and all that different kinds of stuff, but the process is going to be the same. But this particular one, I'm trying to solve for y. So I know that x is equal to, let's say, 2 for this particular one. Process is going to be the same. All I'm doing is just substituting this in, so that's going to be y minus 1, and I'm just substituting the x for 2. So all of that over 2 is equal to 3 over 2. Now, anytime you have your denominators that are the same, that's awesome, because if they are the same, you can just eliminate them. So basically, this is the same thing as y minus 1 is equal to 3. Now, I used 2 so we could actually do that. So if it wasn't that way, you would take a different process. But because this one is done that particular way, we can use it and kind of take that shortcut. So once again, letters on one side, numbers on the other. We're trying to solve for y, so we have to isolate this y. Negative 1, the opposite of that is positive 1. Whatever I do on one side, do on the other. And y is going to be equal to 3 plus 1, which is just in this case going to give me a 4. And that's just a quick way to check that. Now for those, we're going to go into our next section, which is going to be percents. And if you're a business major, you're going to use this a lot. If you're a biology major, you're going to use this a lot. If you're psychology, they have psychology stats. And even in criminal justice, they're starting to use stats for that as well. So when we use percentages, and let's just say we're saying 1/2, 1/2 is the same thing as 1 divided by 2, which is the same thing as a decimal point of 0.5, which is the same thing as a percentage of being 50%. Now notice the only thing that we've done here for this one is move a 2 to the right and add a percentage. Now if I'm using a different fraction, so let's say 1/3, that's the same thing as 1 divided by 3, which is the same thing as 0.033, which is the same thing as 33%. These things are basically interchangeable. If I use 1/4, same process, it's going to be equal to 1 divided by 4, which is going to be equal to 0.25, which is going to be equal to 25%. Automatically, anytime you see 50%, that should automatically clue you that it's 1/2. Or if somebody says 1/2 of something, you should automatically know that that's 50%. Some of these other ones are a little bit harder to remember. I mean, some of them are easy to remember, like 1/4 is 25% because you know that a quarter is worth 25 cents. But anyway, if I ask you, what the percentage is of 5/7, right? Well, if I work that out, it's 0.714 or 71.4%. But you don't need to know all of those all the time. Just focus on but you should know that 1/2 of something is just basically cutting it in half, because that's what we've done with factoring and all that other kind of stuff. So for basically any time you see percentages, what you want to do is make your own equation. And what I mean by that is anytime something says, and that's not just for this class, this is really with anything. If something asks you what number, that's always going to be your x, right? You can just make that your variable. Anytime something says what percent, that would also be your x. So anytime there's something you don't know or it's an unknown and it's a what, that should clue you in that is where you put your x. And I'll kind of show you that in a minute to make it a little bit more clear. Anytime you see an is in a statement, 99 times out of 100 and 100 times in my class, that is telling you that is where your equation divider is, or that is where your equal sign is. And then moving on to some of these other ones, just kind of help you out. Anytime something says of, 99 times out of 100 in life and 100 out of 100 in my class, anytime you see of, that is telling you to multiply. And it's just telling you to put your multiplication. Now, anytime something gives you a percentage, it is wanting you to convert that to a number. I'm just going to abbreviate number with the hashtag. Basically, what you have to do is multiply it by 0.01. If it's asking you what the number is, or it gives you a point, let's just say 5. Easiest thing to do is convert that over. What I mean is convert that to a percentage, and you do that by multiplying it by 100. Now, this is just an easy way to help you set up your equations. So just make sure you have these in your notes, and not just for this class, but your next one as well, because it will come into play. So if I'm trying to work this out, and I had a question that said, and generally all these questions just have all this other filler stuff in there, but I'm going to kind of bypass that. It's going to say what number is 30% of 60. And remember, it'll probably say, what number is 30% of all the apples that somebody picked on a Sunday, and all this other long stuff. Anyway, just focus on the numbers, right? And that's with anything. So the what number, if we think back to our what we just did with our notes, that's going to be my x. My is telling me that's my divider, that's my equal sign. 30%, the first thing I should do is convert that over. And when I convert that over, basically, remember, I'm multiplying it times 0.01, but basically what I'm doing is I'm moving the decimal 2 to the left. Now I can do that after the fact, or I can do that before the fact. Main important thing is just make sure you do that. Now, this is going to, generally what I do is I just wait until the end to kind of convert it over. But anyway, that just becomes 30. The of is telling me to multiply, and then 60 just comes down. This is basically telling me that x is going to be 30 times 60. Now if I multiply 30 times 60, that's going to give me 1800. And remember, our numbers generally stays pretty small. But I said if we got into thousands or even other ones, they're going to have 2 zeros at the end. So basically, x is going to be equal to 1800 because it said one number and it gave you a percentage. When it asks you for a number and it gives you a percentage, the last thing you want to do is multiply it by 0.01, or basically take your decimal 2 spaces to the left, or go 2 to the left. So your final answer is going to be 18. And with anything, let's just go back and look at that logically. It's saying that what number is 30% of 60? Well, we know that 50 is half. So the first thing we want to figure out is what is half of 60? Well, half of 60 would be 30. So anything less than 50% would be between 0 and 30. Now 30% is kind of halfway in between 0 to 30, or 0 to 50 rather. So I know my answer should be somewhere around 15. And it's 18, so that tells me that's a pretty good answer. Even if I did a little bit of math that wasn't quite right, just look at that logically. Now, if I only moved my decimal spot one space and I said x is equal to 180, and I said, well, I know that half of 60 is 30, so I know my answer's got to be below 30, and this is 180. Automatically, that should tell you that something went wrong, and you should go back and kind of look at your decimal spots. So if I use another one that said what percent, and remember this one said what number, this one is saying what percent, and this one is saying what percent of 25 is 10. And remember, for your word problems that you'll see outside of this classroom, you'll have other stuff written down. Once again, my what percentage is my x, my of is telling me to multiply, 25 comes down, is my equal sign, and then my 10 just comes down. So remember, I can multiply anything. 25 times x is just 25x. And 25x is equal to 10. So I divide both of these by 25. Whatever I do on one side of the equation, still do on the other side. This allows me to come down to my single x. Now remember, this is 10 divided by 25. I can factor this because both of these are divisible by 5 because they end in 0 and 5. So if I divide both of these by 5, this actually breaks down to 2/5. And remember, 2 divided by 5 is just written this way. Because the 5 is bigger, I know I'm going to have a decimal. So remember, wherever my decimal point is going to be located directly above that. So 5 won't divide into 2, but 5 will go into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20, and that just leaves you with a 0. So you're left with 0.4. So this one is 0.4, but remember, when it says what percentage, then last thing you have to do is multiply this by 100. And basically what that means is you take this 2 to the right. So if I'm moving this particular one, and it's asking me what my percentage is, I go 2 to the right, and I fill whatever's left in by zeros. So this is telling you that this is going to be 40%. And once again, we're going to go back in and look at this logically. What percentage of 25 is 10? Well, automatically I know half of 25 will be somewhere between 12 and 13. So I know that 10 should be a little bit less than 50%. And a little bit less than 50%, this one tells me it's 40%. That gives me a good indication that I'm probably in the right ballpark.